Welcome to the world of Fanfic Friday. My wife and Caitlyn are busy staring at Mystic Messenger right now. They're fascinated.
I'm not.
Oh, you weren't? What were you? I can't tell what you're doing.
With a dog.
Oh, you were looking at a dog.
Trying to make sure that I get my needs met.
I can't do that? Is that what you're saying?
I have a beautiful Korean
I'm
boyfriend.
sat right here. I can't meet your needs?
No, because you're not a beautiful Korean boyfriend.
I would leave, but
Who is fake.
But we're here for Fanfiction Friday.
Yeah!
Fanfiction Friday!
Fanfiction, which
wah, wah, wah.
often features hot Korean boyfriends.
Yeah.
In fanfiction in general, not in ours necessarily.
Yeah,
Depends on what the suggestions are. But this is a series where we take 3 hats, and we have a hat for characters, a hat for locations, and a hat for scenarios. And we have innumerable suggestions thrown into each. I think we must have at least 50 in each hat in any given time.
Or more.
And we draw 2 characters each, we draw a location, and we draw a scenario. And these elements have to be thrown together into a single, hopefully coherent story. We have 30 minutes to write them, so the challenge is limited time, specific elements, good fanfic, hopefully. My story this week, unfortunately, kind of involves spoilers. I don't want to say, and it's not specifically spoilers, because it's a parody of something that happens in the Marvel movies.
Okay.
Having said that, here are the characters that I drew this week. The Hamburglar and Bucky, the Winter Soldier, Captain America's old sidekick, I want to call him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Captain America and Bucky, sidekick.
Spoilers, the Hamburglars is in Civil War.
Spoilers.
Spoilers.
The Hamburglars.
The location-
Blah, 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 blah.
Speaking of Marvel, the location is New York City. And the
Pardon me, are you Aaron Burr?
Sir. The scenario is getting stuck in traffic, which was suggested by TB Tabby. So tuberculosis tabby,
Oh.
I believe is
Thanks
what that's
and
short
sorry
for.
about your
Oh.
illness.
Sorry about that. With that, here's my story. The ancient metal door whirred, clunking to a methodical stop. Machinery that must have stood for the last several decades towered before them, enormous cylindrical containers reaching heights that caused Ronald to cringe with vertigo as he did his best to fathom the room's dimensions. He stepped inside, clown shoes slapping harshly against the cement. The floor was wet with condensation and the sweat of whoever had toiled long enough to create this room of scientific horrors. It was a prison of sorts, though bent on keeping those outside from getting in just as much as it had been designed to keep those contained within it from breaking out. "What madness is this?" exclaimed Colonel Sanders, who had strode into the room with only a moment's hesitation. His pristine white mustache fidgeted beneath his nose impatiently, and his glasses reflected in them the maddening myriad of console screens with their digital green numbers and text blinking inefficiently into the ether. "And they said I was crazy when I unveiled my 24 chicken nuggets for $5 deal!" "This is inhuman," spoke Ronald McDonald, staring at the enormous cylinders crammed tightly stuffed with burger filling. It was like something out of a nightmare, like David Lynch and Philip K. Dick had combined their efforts with the journalistic talents of Eric Schlosser. Ronald was surprisingly well read for a fast food chain mascot dressed like a clown. Who could have done something like this? What monster is responsible? Ahem. A nearby speaker fizzed to life, a sinister, high-pitched voice emitting from its obsolete innards. "That would be me, rabble-rabble." An aperture in one of the walls showed movement, and Ronald and Colonel Sanders were immediately drawn to the owner of the voice, a red-headed man with an unnecessarily long red tie, patterned with hamburgers, and a black eye mask shielding his true appearance. He stood behind the protective glass and sneered at the two of them. "You," Ronald called out, pulling out his gun and aiming it at the window. Ronald McDonald totally has a gun on him at all times, by the way.
Oh.
"Release the meat and nobody has to die." "I think you'll find that to be quite incorrect, rabble-rabble," the man scoffed. "Especially once you realize that nothing you can do could stop what I have put into motion."
Is rabble rabble something the Hamburglar says?
Yeah, dude, that's like a big part of his character.
I see.
Yeah.
I have not been keeping up with the McDonald's canon.
Rabble-rabble, that's a big part of it. That's like his catchphrase.
I failed.
Also, he tapped the window in front of him, his image vibrating in time with his voice as he did so. "Bulletproof glass." "Who in the heck are you, son?" Colonel Sanders demanded. "Nobody important," the mastermind rabbled pleasantly. "Certainly nobody who could change the course of history. At least that's what you would like to think, I'm sure. But events have already transpired that are guaranteed to skew the vehicle of destiny right off the road and into a nearby ditch. Rabble, rabble. Ronald grew frustrated with the man. It infuriated him even more that he had no idea who this criminal was than it did he had stolen all of the hamburger filling on the East Coast and kept it hidden here, presumably as part of some mad scheme.
That monster.
My name is Burglar, the man explained. Hamburglar. And I am your downfall. You're nothing, Ronald defied the Hamburglar, brandishing his weapon as ineffective as it was in the situation. You think swiping our hamburgers is enough to topple the McDonald's empire? Think again. All you have succeeded in doing is uniting myself and my good friend Colonel Sanders here in our fight to stop you. We will stop this, stop you, and in doing so prevent this from ever happening again. I had a feeling you'd say that, the Hamburglar giggled gleefully, holding up a red-gloved hand. So I prepared an informative little film for both of you. Upon one of the giant wall-mounted screens, a new image flickered to life. An old security video which, according to the date and time, was taken months ago. It depicted a busy evening road in New York City, at the end of which could be dimly seen the twin golden arches that warmed Ronald's heart just to look at. I know this road, said Ronald. A car pulled into shot, a familiar convertible whose confines the portly purple driver barely fit in. The Grimace slowly positioned his car a few inches behind the vehicle in front of him, waiting for an opportunity to overtake. Come on, the Grimace squirmed in his seat, the car's confines forcing him to sweat and wriggle in place. A seatbelt was tied lazily about his waist. In the passenger seat, his wife, Mrs. Grimace. Behind him in the back seat, his two Grimace children.
What did Mrs. Grimace look like?
Identical.
Like a purple chicken
With like a
nugget.
bow in her hair, maybe. Ronald cursed his own inherent racism as he realized they all looked identical. What is this? Ronald wondered aloud. He needn't have wondered for much longer. From nowhere, a motorcycle rode up next to the convertible, its rider a mysterious, handsome stranger with long flowing brown hair and a distinctive metal arm.
He was also a human being.
Before the Grimace could even turn to respond, the biker had slammed his vibranium fist into the side of the car, causing it to careen wildly into a nearby streetlight. The ensuing chaos was violent and indistinct. The security footage was low definition and had been hastily edited together from numerous cameras, but it was enough for Ronald to get a good look at the Grimace's final moments. The man, the soldier, judging by his manner and expertise as he set about killing the family of bloated purple mascot creatures, went straight to the driver's seat first, yanking the door off and hurling the Grimace to the ground, blood pooling in his round, googly eyes as he struggled to even speak pitiful pleas of desperation. The soldier stooped down and drove his fist between Ronald's friend's eyes, driving what was presumably a skull back into the side of the car. Grimace struggled for a second, then ceased to move. His belly jiggled no more. Then, despite Ronald McDonald's most earnest wishes, the soldier stood up and set about killing the Grimace's family. It wasn't very PG-13, despite the nature of this story, so we're going to skim over all that and leave a lot of it implied. It seems more unsettling that way. Suffice to say, there were a lot of overweight purple corpses lying on the side of the road when all was said and done.
My people.
The soldier... You're purple?
Yeah.
Your hair's getting there. The soldier stood and faced the security camera, pulling out his own revolver and firing, cutting the footage short. I have to wonder why he didn't shoot the camera before he committed those grisly murders, the Hamburglar thought aloud. But then I guess your priorities change when you're killing an entire family. Ronald stared dumbfounded at the screen, which now displayed only static. Colonel Sanders recognized that look. He'd seen many a KFC customer sporting it before downing one of his many fried chicken recipes. Concern mixed with apprehension, mixed with guilt, mixed with self-loathing, mixed with anger, mixed with hunger. Except in this case, it was hunger for revenge. Hey now, Colonel Sanders remarked, his voice catching on his words as he struggled to withhold his emotion. Come on, MacDonald, let's not do anything hasty. Did you know? Ronald turned and stared Colonel Sanders dead in the eye. Did I? Sanders' mouth twitched, giving him away. Maybe we should take a moment to... Don't bullshit me, Sanders, did you know? Ronald McDonald cried through his teeth at the old southern gentleman. Colonel Sanders swallowed. Yes, I knew. Ronald took a step back, betrayal evident behind the red and white paint that coloured his typically bright and sunshiny features. Then they fought. The Hamburglar watched with glee as they tore each other apart in an angry, haphazard struggle for domination. In the hands of a writer who had more than 30 minutes to write something, it would have been extremely poetic and symbolic of the fast food war for franchise supremacy. As it is, however, it just looked like a clown and an old plantation owner beating the shit out of each other. The Hamburglar laughed triumphantly before adding, "Rabble, rabble."
Oh.
He tore them apart.
Tore them apart, man.
But in this
Tore
case,
everyone apart,
what
too.
team would you side on? Team Mick?
I'm a
or
Team Ronald or Team Sanders?
Yeah.
Say Team Mick?
Team Mick
Oh,
or
Mick.
Team Kfs?
It's the
McDonald's, you want Ronald or you want Colonel Sanders?
I think I side with Ronald McDonald.
I mean, let's be real here. The only good thing at KFC are their biscuits.
That's true.
Whereas McDonald's fries.
Also, I don't want to support, like, I feel like Colonel Sanders, I don't know, he's like the whitest possible mascot character you can have.
Ronald McDonald is literally painted white.
But he's a clown, he could be any colour underneath that. Colonel Sanders is like white privilege, the character.
Tilly, what team are you
I mean,
on?
he is basically a plantation
Plantation
owner.
owner.
Tilly, are you Team Colonel or Ronald McDonald?
Are you Team Colonel or Ronald McDonald? Are you Ronald McDonald?
Are you Ronald McDonald?
She's like, neither,
It's a very
because
important question.
you don't buy me food that's delicious and unhealthy.
Alright, well that was my story. I apologise to anybody I just spoiled for Civil War.
Yes, now you know that the Hamburglar was the villain all along.
That's a shocking twist.
My story this week is also a parody of another movie. And this one, if you haven't seen it by now, I don't know what to tell you.
Uh-oh.
Because it's fucking Shrek. So,
Oh, okay. I've seen that.
this week I drew Shrek, suggested by Da Bayleaf, which is what I put in beef stew last night.
Bay
Leaf.
leaf.
Hey,
I drew Shrek and Bridget Jones. The location was Hyrule, and the scenario was revealing their secret identity. Fiona gazed at nothing, eyes sweeping the horizon forlornly as she watched the sun inch with painful certainty towards the mountains. She sighed, moving her glance to her thick emerald hands, which would change as they did every night. She never truly felt like herself because she was never in one body long enough to know what that felt like. "Everything all right?" A familiar Scottish accent carried its way on the wind to her funneled ears, unconsciously drooped under the weight of her secret. "Yes," Fiona responded a little too quickly. Heaving another heavy sigh, she looked out into the distance again, seeing the hint of Hyrule's castle town some ways off.
I feel like we should mention that Shrek was like your thing back in school, right, Mariana?
Should we?
Like, would you show up to school wearing Shrek ears? Is that a thing you would do?
Yes, it was.
Okay, so this is semi-autobiographical.
I didn't know this.
Yeah, I
For
showed
real?
up to
I
school.
didn't know.
I showed up to school wearing Shrek ears a lot. I also had like a donkey that was probably about this big, a little plush one, and you pulled his tail out and he would vibrate when it would go back in.
Hey,
So
man!
I'd walk up to tables full of like football players and I'd be like, "Hey, you guys want to play with my ass?" They didn't know how to respond.
I don't know if I knew that.
I'm sure I
I just
mentioned
thought
it.
you did the Shrek costume
character,
thing.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was
That was
Shrek.
like a dream come true for her.
Was it?
Until it happened.
Yeah, I was
Aw.
Shrek at Universal Studios for probably about a year, and then I switched over to Frankenstein and Leatherface.
So with that in mind,
Yeah.
Well, she sees the hint of Hyrule's castle town some ways off. They would be there early in the day tomorrow, there was no worry of that. Arriving this evening was even a possibility, but restless skeletons and poes that haunted the fields at night would make the journey more difficult than it needed to be, so they were bedded down at the mouth of what she was told was Kokiri Forest. She was given the large trunk of a tree to bed down in for privacy, but felt no urge to utilize it at the moment. Instead, she sat near the fire, feeling more comfortable while in the presence of another ogre.
can you imagine a DreamWorks Zelda movie? Imagine the DreamWorks face
Link
on
would just be like, "You sure are doing a lot of sighing for someone who's fine." Shrek came and sat beside her on the ground, their hands touching for the briefest of moments. A sharp intake of breath betrayed the touch as being more than it was to both of them, and their eyes met, an electricity sparking between them even though the contact was gone.
Wait, have they not hooked up yet?
No, because
Oh.
it's that
This is
night
like-
right before.
Yeah.
Fiona dropped her eyes, releasing the breath that had caught in her throat at the touch. "What's Ganon like?" Eager to cut the tension, Fiona brought up the one subject that would remind them both that they had
Oh yeah, we
obligations.
hung out in college.
Shrek raised an eyebrow, surprised that she wouldn't have known. "You lived in the Gerudo Valley," he said simply. "Didn't the women talk about him there?" "They did," she said, shifting and resting her hands in her lap. But that's just talk. People are more complicated than that. Shrek recalled his meeting with Ganon, who had assigned him the task of bringing him the most beautiful Gerudo in his village.
Epona would be voiced by Eddie Murphy.
Oh, I didn't even put Epona in here, or Donkey, to be honest.
Oh, what?
Good.
He didn't know if Fiona was actually Gerudo, but in his eyes, she was the most breathtaking woman there. He had walked away from his encounter with his fellow Green Man less than thrilled with his personality.
Green Man.
Well, to put it lightly, Shrek paused, taking time to find the appropriate word. He's pretty much an asshole. I mean, I heard he almost ran a kid over with his horse. Then he trapped a girl in some crystal. It's pretty fucked up. Fiona blinked from the sudden, candid, R-rated response. She smiled.
The whole movie he's like, oh shucks. And one time he's like, fuck him.
Ganon's a pussy. She smiled before she remembered that she had to marry him. Getting to her feet, she watched the sun touch the tip of the mountains in the distance. It would be time for the change soon, and she wanted to hide before it was too late. Good night, Shrek. Tomorrow's the big day. Are you ready for it? She didn't respond. 24 hours had come and gone in the blink of an eye, lost in the steps taken to the castle and the following wedding preparations. He had spared no expense in the festivities, though it hardly mattered. The majority of the town was dead or re-dead, so the guest list was pretty small. An ominous cloud hung over the castle, which was suspended over a moat of bubbling lava. Where did he even get lava, let alone keep it hot enough for it to remain a liquid? Fiona shook her head, clearing her thoughts and looking at herself in the mirror. A veil ghosted over the back of her neck, the white not entirely complementary to her shade of green. She would have preferred an ivory, but when you were marrying a villain, one had very little choice in the matter. A knock at the door signaled that the wedding was about to start, and she got to her feet, prepared to trudge down the aisle to her fate with another green man that she would never love. Walking to the end of the red carpet that sliced through the church, Fiona slowly made her way towards her husband-to-be, the music playing in a deliberately minor key, as though to highlight the terrible decision she was making. She made it to the end, and a text box appeared below the minister. Do you, Fiona, take Ganon to be your lawfully wedded husband?
It's the owl and it just says yes or no, but if you click no, it just starts over again.
Yeah. I do, she responded hesitantly after the awkward pause, because it's just like a text box. Ganon threw his nose up in the air a few times with an open, smiling mouth, something she could only interpret as a laugh, as a silent laugh.
That he's pressing A through the whole thing, being like, get to the good part.
Yeah. Excellent, Ganon said, also in a box. Great, so much for dinner conversation. The minister held his hands open, continuing, If anyone has a reason why these two shall not be wed, speak now or forever hold your peace. Fiona closed her eyes, accepting her fate. Bang! I object! Cried the familiar ogre, and Fiona whipped around to face him, visibly relieved. What is this? Ganondorf demanded, visually offended. I can't let this go on, Shrek said, chopping through the air with a hand for emphasis.
I thought you were going to say chop through the text box.
If only. That would be a very Shrek thing to do.
Yeah.
Just like kick through it. I love that woman, and I can't let her be with villains like you. Oh, Shrek, she exclaimed, overcome with her feelings that had developed over the time they had traveled together. Hurry, come here and kiss me. Wow, you don't waste any time, do you? He said, but he was obviously not bothered. No snark, just kiss me now, please. Her eyes darted to the horizon, the setting sun now a ticking time bomb. Shrek took her hands in his, rubbing the backs of her palms with his fingers as he looked into her eyes, framed by hair that was now changing color. Shrek's face fell, and Fiona stepped back, covering her cheeks with her arms. No, don't look at me! She cried, her voice strangely different. Green skin faded to porcelain white. Her body shrank to half its size. After her transformation, her hands fell to her sides, and Shrek audibly gasped. I'm sorry. Bridget Jones now stood before him.
Oh no!
Squinted eyes now squinted even more to hold back the tears that threatened to fall. I was cursed by a witch with no boyfriend. She was jealous of my beauty in the valley, so she forced me to turn into Bridget Jones until I could find someone who loved me for who I truly was. Only true love's kiss could break the spell, or a third movie. Wow, Shrek breathed. Shrek the back of his neck with his back. Wow, Shrek breathed, scratching the back. scratching the
back.
back of his head with a massive hand. Well, you know they're coming out with that Bridget Jones's Baby movie, right? They are? Fiona exclaimed, and Shrek nodded in affirmation. Would you like to go see it? Together? Fiona blushed, the color more apparent in her now white cheeks, and she took Shrek's extended hand as they walked towards the door, leaving Ganon alone at the altar. He looked at the minister, then visibly shook with anger before throwing his fist to his before throwing his fist to his sides and apparently shouting, "What the fuck, man?"
That was cool. I was invested. I kept waiting for Link to show up, though. I felt bad. I was like, where's Link?
No, he is certainly
He's not
not in
coming.
this story.
It was good. I liked it.
Yeah!
My story has Genji from Overwatch, which
Okay.
was recommended by King of Prosecutors.
Oh,
I also have Holtzmann from Ghostbusters.
do the prosecutors have a monarchy?
Apparently, because he's a king.
Maybe he
Or
was
she's a
voted
king.
in.
They're the king.
Maybe he's like
Uh,
a dog.
Finding out they're allergic to dogs.
Well, speaking of which.
Yeah, I know.
Wait, that's a scenario?
Yes.
Okay.
That's
And then the
fine.
place that they're at is the Museum at Night, which was recommended by D. Cross.
So it's like night at the museum?
Basically,
Okay.
but not, because that has nothing to do with the story. She wasn't sure what a Doomfist was, but Holtzman wasn't about to pass up the opportunity to find out. The flight to Africa and breaking into a museum weren't huge concerns so long as she wasn't caught or killed in the process. Besides, she only wanted to run a couple tests and see what it could do anyway. No harm, no foul, right? The security systems in Nubani Museum were surprisingly high-tech, but didn't take much time to slip past. I feel like I should explain some of the science of how I did this out loud, just in case anyone was listening, but that's probably not going to help me get through this museum on the off chance the security guard is actually paying attention. Holtzman said to herself just loud enough that anyone paying any bit of real attention could actually hear her.
We heard you, Holtzman.
We heard you. We love you.
It was then that she heard footsteps quickly padding across the floor in the room next to her. She didn't really plan for any sort of scuffle, and all she had at her disposal were 2 small pistols that were connected to her proton pack, which she decided she should never be without, not only in case ghosts were around, but because it made her look pretty damn cool. The footsteps became clearer and louder as she realized she would have to think of something quick to not be shot on sight. She rounded the corner quickly with her hands up while calmly saying, "I come in peace," with a deranged smile that made her pursuer stop dead in his tracks. I want to do a Genji voice, but
Don't.
I
It's
don't
pretty
want to be
racist.
racist, so I'm not going to. "Why are you here?" the robotic-looking man said, with 3 shuriken posed at the ready in his hand. "What in the fresh hell is that?" Holtzman said as she quickly stepped forward and grabbed the hand that had shuriken locked and loaded. Genji was taken aback by this woman who was heavily laden with gear that looked like it had the potential to be dangerous, but wasn't making any effort to attack or stand defensively. "Are you a cyborg? Holy Kazoli, we need to be friends right now," she said as she lifted up his arm and began poking the weapons that were poised to kill her. "Before any bond is formed with you, it might better suit you to tell me why you are here," Genji said, returning to normal stance and pulling his arm away. Holtzman looked like someone had given her ice cream and taken it away as the arm seemed to float just out of her reach in slow motion. She sighed heavily and jutted out her hand to the man, probably a man in front of her, and chimed,
That's sexist.
Very,
"Well, she doesn't know."
very
could not be a
sexist.
man.
Very sexist.
"Holtzman," with a more neutral smile. "I saved the world from some ghosty goos in Manhattan not too long ago. Don't know if you've heard of us," Holtzman said proudly, adjusting her shirt in an overly exaggerated manner. "If you have acquired such fame, then why are you sneaking into a museum at nighttime?" Genji said with an electric frizz, interrupting him. "You alright there, buddy?" Holtzman said in a truly concerned manner. "I'm fine. Possibly an electrical short." "Electrical short? You are a cyborg! This is the best day ever! I don't even need to check out that fist thing anymore if— Then you are here for the Doomfist," Genji said, now sounding more concerned. Despite the more serious tone, the short electrical buzzes were sort of cute and exceedingly hard to ignore for Holtzman. "Are you sure you're okay? That sounds like it's happening a lot more often. Don't want you to short-circuit completely or anything," Holtzman said, half with care and half with excitement since she's wanted to be a cyborg since she was 5. "You must leave this place," Genji said, his body beginning to convulse with each zap. "Not until I find out what's wrong with my new best friend," Holtzman said, taking a few steps closer to the ailing cyborg. "Stop!" Genji yelled. "I can control this. Your safety is not guaranteed."
Consent.
"Hold up!" Holtzman said, taking a step back and sticking her hands up as if surrendering. "Is your human half allergic to dogs?" Genji had taken a knee due to the frequency of the jolts he kept receiving. I was, but that was a long time ago.
No, she's
See?
glitching.
She's allergic too.
She's got it, man.
No.
He noticed that Holtzman stepping back had lessened the frequency of the attacks, but they were still happening quite often. I found a pet shop that was closing, and so I adopted every dog, and they're all in my van, and I must be covered in dog hair. Oh, buddy, Holtzman said, wanting to step forward and comfort the cyborg, but knowing that wouldn't be very helpful. Well, how about this? I'm just gonna leave my number, she said, scribbling her number on a notepad, and you can call me so I can learn more about you, and I'm just gonna go, leaving you and the Fistinator alone so no one has to involve the police. Good? Good, she said, folding up a quick paper airplane and flying it in his general direction. Wait, He stopped as the paper airplane smacked him in the faceplate. See you around, new friend! She yelled loud enough that it could be heard despite her walking out the exit door.
Why didn't she just come to the museum during regular hours?
Because she wanted to, like, take it out of the case and play with it.
Oh,
Because she, like, brought a bunch of gear with her to, like, run tests or whatever, but...
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought she was, like, going in there just to, like, look at it, but...
No, she wanted to tinker with it.
Okay.
She was gonna be the next Doomfist.
What does that mean?
In Overwatch, like, did you ever watch that initial first trailer at the museum?
Yeah.
So, that fist thing that they're trying to take, there's been a succession of, like, kind of like Green Lantern has the ring, and anyone who has the ring can use all the powers or whatever. Doomfist is the same thing, and there have been, I think, 3 Doomfists before. And so, that's why they were trying to steal it to, like, create a new Doomfist.
Widowmaker.
And that's why everyone's like, no! So, yeah.
What did Widowmaker do?
Wasn't it her and Reaper?
Yeah, it was her and
Why'd you
Reaper
highlight her, though? Reaper did bad things, too.
Because they both fucked it up.
They both fucked it up.
They were trying to...
There was more Widowmaker in that trailer thing, though, than there was of Reaper, so I understand why you were...
That's another week.
In the bucket.
In the refrigerator.
Fanfiction.
Thrown it out.
The door's closed. The jello's jiggling. It's in the refrigerator.
Except it's not. It's actually on Archive of Our Own if you look up 3 Hats.
Check
That's
it
where
out.
you can find our fanfiction if you don't want to hear us talking about it.
Link is in the description. You can go there, read all the fics that we just read, and some more that you haven't heard.
And if you want to be involved in the process, you can leave comments that have locations, scenarios, and characters in the comments below, and we will actually go through those and pick some out.
We add pretty much every single usable suggestion to our hats.
What's an example of an unusable suggestion?
Don't have those 2 assholes from the IT crowd in the office from the IT crowd
2 assholes.
talking about each other and the IT crowd.
So please throw your suggestions at us, and we'll do our best to catch them in our brains and use them in the future when they come up.
I'm sorry, I burped.
How dare you? I'm ending this video right now because of what had just happened with Caitlyn burping.
Oh no!